Hello, welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. This is your webinar. Welcome to Mobile and COVID, the future of acquisition, retention, partnerships, and more in the post-pandemic world. I'm your host, Peggy Ann Saltz, mobile analyst, tech consultant, founder of Mobile Groove, my content marketing and app marketing consultancy. So we're looking at retail. The lockdown has sent shockwaves in the industry. Open up opportunities, however. If we stay with retail, data from Adobe's May 2020 Digital Economy Index tells us it's been a rapid shift, catapulted retail, an entire industry, more than 4 years into the future in just under 4 months. That's massive. So growth, but what are the needs of these shoppers, these new shoppers coming into mobile as well? And how can you build the capabilities and partnerships to meet them? Tough questions, as always, as you would expect here, but we get straight answers from my guest, president of TopHatter, a discovery shopping marketplace that's been around since 2012 and seen a lot of changes, but always focused on helping smart shoppers discover new products and save money. Thank you so much, Andrew Blachman, my guest today from TopHatter. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here, and thanks for having me.
And I said it at the top, founded in 2012. That is, that seems like quite a while. You've seen a lot of changes, been there, done that. I mean, thinking of this as an e-commerce marketplace long before a lot of the other companies I'm looking at, to be quite frank, right? But the last 6 months top it all. So I talked about the acceleration of mobile commerce, e-commerce, online commerce. That's what happened. It was an acceleration of change, but it has implications. What are you perhaps seeing, or what does that mean for you when things are moving, literally at the speed of change?
Yeah, well, I think, as you mentioned, we've been around for, going on, this is actually our 9th year now, so we've been around for a while, but we actually even have a longer view than that. We look at the way e-commerce has evolved really since its inception, which is sort of the last 25 years. We think it's really changed the way consumers buy products. So if you know kind of what you want, you search on Google or Amazon, you find it, you get great shipping options and low prices and lots of selection. And it's really redefined the way people buy products. But what's happened more recently, and sort of the trend that we've always been betting on, is that it's also going to eventually change the way people shop for products, which essentially is the products or brands or experiences that you don't know about before you're going to make that transaction. So it's about generating that demand and not just harvesting demand that's out there. That's behavior that we think is relatively new online, and that's accelerated dramatically over the last few years, and then particularly this year. As you mentioned, it's really just compressed a lot of change into a very short period of time. But we've seen that happening for a while now, and yeah, we think there's big opportunities. And specifically, as you talk about mobile, mobile's been around for a while, but most mobile experiences are really reimagining the sort of desktop experience in a different form factor. So kind of shrinking things, making it easier to check out on mobile. And there's been a lot of progress there. And most of it's around buying as well. Our business is a little bit different because we've tried to reimagine a shopping experience that was built entirely for mobile. So it looks very different. And I think those kind of experiences are also starting to grow really fast, given consumers are spending more of their time on devices, and especially in sort of a lockdown world that we've been in the US for most of this year, we've seen a lot of acceleration on that.
I could imagine, Andrew, because you're very different. You're about discovery. So it's not just like I go in there with a search query and find stuff. I go in there with interest, passion, time on my hands, great match accident, actually, if you think about it, with a pandemic, because we're confined to our homes. We can look more and search, and experience more, discover more. Is this been something that has been, how has this impacted user acquisition? Because I could imagine you might have seen a number of organics that you weren't counting on, or maybe you're even seeing like a different type of user interacting with you than you did originally. So it's probably, it's probably a positive and a negative. I'd love to hear from you what the impact on user acquisition.
Yeah, so it certainly has impacted user acquisition, but it's also impacted consumer behavior. So you're right. There's been a lot of people with a lot of time on their hands, and they want to kill that time in a fun way. They want to spend their time, not their money, is one way to think about it. And we're a great place for that because we offer these great deals, but you can come in and have a lot of fun doing it. We actually compare ourselves in a lot of ways to sort of offline equivalents like TJ Maxx or Ross, or these kind of treasure hunt type experiences where consumers are going there to get, excuse me, to get a great deal, but they're also going there for the experience and the thrill of finding that deal. And those kind of experiences aren't available to people. So one way to think about it is like shopping. There's a lot of joy in shopping beyond just like that transaction that you're trying to consummate. And so we think that we're one of those platforms that people can take advantage of, even though stores are closed and malls are closed. I think in terms of user acquisition, it's really just accelerated things like it has for a lot of other people. We have more, there's more of a shift of time spent. Most of our user acquisition is through platforms like Facebook and also through friend referrals, and there's just more of that going on. And so we've seen definitely an uptick of that. We've had plenty of challenges through the pandemic, but on the demand side, we've really seen a lot of growth.
So I want to stay with UA for just a moment, because you talk about, and you're a proponent of this, and I like this, I put this in quotes, efficient user acquisition strategy, which is something I haven't heard in that way. We don't talk about being efficient, maybe effective, maybe, growth, right? Efficient, that word there. What does that mean for you, and how are you actually actioning on it, I guess is the question. How do you know that you're pursuing this strategy? Maybe how do I know if I'm hitting the mark or missing? What can you tell me about efficient?
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting because we definitely look at our user acquisition and our growth strategies in terms of efficiency. But it's funny when you think about our business, we don't look at most other parts of our business that way, and I'll explain why in a minute. But in terms of user acquisition for us, what we mean by efficiency is that we want to find channels that can scale and that can scale, profitably. So obviously, you need to be really careful about understanding the unit economics of your acquisition and understanding how quickly you get payback and what your return on investment is. But one important criteria that a lot of marketers sometimes overlook is just the predictability and scale of the channels that you're in. So an example of that is we love it. Virality is great. You get referrals that grow the business, or you find like these channels that you can scale really quickly and get a lot of new users in. That's great, but to me, that's not efficient, and that's not what we focus on. We focus instead on channels that we know are always going to be there, or are very likely to always be there, and that we can spend more. And as we spend more, the scale of our platform is better and the user experience is better, and it has kind of a flywheel effect to it. And so we spend a lot on, Facebook as a channel for us has been really effective, but we are very careful to make sure that we're not relying on Facebook, organic reach, because that is not in our control. But Facebook paid reach, we think, is really efficient if you can understand your core metrics and get early signals on payback. So that's what we mean when we say efficiently. We want to be able to spend certain amounts, and then we want to be able to grow that spend predictably and not have like these huge wins that are then followed by a period of desert. So,
or huge wins where they never come back is also the
they never come back, or maybe a great like big inflow of new customers that might actually be great customers, but then you have to wait a month or two before you have the next big inflow, because our marketplace really relies on the supply side as well, knowing the demand that's going to be there. And so having efficient and predictable growth is really key. But the reason I say the reason I say it's ironic is because our whole business is not efficient. So if you look at most e-commerce businesses, you're trying to measure conversion rate, and like you want to drive as high a conversion rate as you can, and you want to get the consumer through the funnel as fast as possible. Because we're more of an entertainment-like experience, we're actually more focused on like how much time a user spends in the app and how frequently they come back, not the efficient metrics of conversion. So anyway, that's a little bit of an aside, but it's interesting.
No, it is interesting because your bigger business model, which I'm going to get to, is about a business ecosystem with partnerships and other things. But you said it, you mentioned it, I was going to say, great segue. because you were talking about supply chain issues. If I had $1 for every time I hear it from a commerce company, because this is the time when you're confronted by your biggest challenges. You know, the pandemic will decide when you're going to get your goods from China, not your order, right? And so you have to reimagine your supply chain. And I've been looking how companies do it. You also have a very interesting approach I'd love you to share, because it's about you, in a way, sort of setting the structure in which this will happen and still give me a great experience as a user, as a customer.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier on, we've seen a lot of really positive impacts this year of demand. We've seen plenty of negative impacts, and you probably just touched on one of the most significant of those, which is the supply chain. And so I should be clear for a second that we're a marketplace. We're not a retailer. So whereas we're very involved in every transaction and we need to understand the supply chain that our sellers face, we're lucky in the sense that we can pivot relatively quickly from like one supply business model to a different business model, because we have different suppliers that are operating different models. So some have warehouses, some don't, some are drop shipping, some are selling, you know, straight from China, some have operations in the US and are their own brand. So there's a mix of suppliers there. But we have seen a lot of upheaval this year for two reasons. One is the pandemic, as you mentioned, which really clogged up a lot of supply chains in terms of, you know, just one simple statistic that people don't realize is that most goods that come from China to the US actually come on passenger flights, not on, you know, cargo ships. And so a lot of that stuff, I shouldn't say most goods, but certain classes of goods. And so when there are no passenger flights, there's much less capacity to ship goods. And so we saw prices go up and delivery speeds go up as well, in a bad way. Similarly, kind of unrelated to the pandemic, the US, there's been some changes in the postal agreements world globally. And so a lot of prices that were really predictable in past years have changed dramatically this year. And so that's affected certain sellers and benefited other sellers. So if you're a seller that, you know, drop ships directly from China, your prices have gone up probably about 50%. And if you're a seller in the US, you have an advantage now because you can deliver the goods faster and your prices are not that much higher than they used to be. So we as a business have really been always trying to understand the impact of that on the consumer and trying to give opportunities for our sellers to have various business models and shift between the two.
Speaking of those business models, I mean, there might be some advice for some people in the audience as well. You know, it's not just about the marketplace that you're building, it's the marketplace you're enabling. You have partnerships with brands, companies that you work together with and can also work to acquire new customers. It's key for you both, actually. How does that work together? What advice could you give based on that?
Well, so one of our, you know, I think this touches on the supply chain issue as well. Like one of the things that we've been doing more and more of is, and this may be specific to us, so I don't want to be careful that it might be just about TopHatter, but think about more broadly about discovery. We realize that our platform is an engaging discovery experience for consumers. And just as a consumer might want to discover a new product, they're also open to discovering new brands and services. And thankfully, in today, a lot of those services are delivered digitally. And so you completely eliminate the supply chain issue. So for us, it's been a really big benefit to have more digital products and services and partners. And a lot of those partners, I mean, I can give an example, which is a partner of ours is Rakuten, which operates one of the largest sort of cashback platforms in the world. They're the largest cashback platform in the US. Rakuten Rewards, and they have a really compelling value proposition for consumers, but it's very difficult for them to educate new consumers about it. And they looked at us as an e-commerce platform where people are open to new things and are using us as a user acquisition channel to sign up new customers. And especially when you're at the point of sale, you're buying something, cashback makes a ton of sense. Trying to convince someone to do cashback that isn't buying something is kind of a weird idea, but when they're buying something, it makes a lot of sense. So that's one example of a partnership that's really benefited them and benefited us. But again, it's in more of the digital world than in the real physical retailer world. But that's how
That
we
makes
look at these
perfect
partnerships,
sense.
is something that can
Uh-huh.
add to our value proposition of discovery, but be
Okay.
a user acquisition channel for the partner.
And it makes a lot of sense because those are user acquisition channels where it's part of the experience. As you said, I'm at the checkout. I will be interested in a rewards offer. What are some others? I
Yep.
mean, that isn't just your only one, I believe. And then I wanted to get to the user experience, but I did want to understand the partnership experience.
Yeah, so that's one example, but there are plenty of others where I think this boils down to our focus on, again, discovery. So if you think about selling, a seller selling on Amazon, just generally speaking, or a brand selling on Amazon, that consumer on Amazon is looking for something, and they're trying to, you know, check out as fast as they can. And the brand is essentially paying for distribution. They might already have an awareness on that platform already. I mean, users typing in the brand to begin with. And so that's really about distribution. But with us,
Mm-hmm.
we are about discovery, and a user might find something new. And then really importantly, like we love the fact that a user can find something new on our platform and then stay engaged with it over time. We don't want them necessarily coming back to TopHatter every time they need to, you know, let's say, give you an example. Let's say you buy, like, you find some great deal on some new product that you weren't aware of on TopHatter. We don't mind, and we actually encourage that brand to establish a long-term relationship with the customer, where they're viewing TopHatter as almost a user acquisition vehicle more than a
Hmm.
distribution vehicle for their product. And because we know that if you already know what you want, we're competing with everybody. We don't need you to come back to TopHatter to go and just complete the transaction. We want you to come to us when you don't know what you want, which is a lot of the time. And so our partnerships kind of run the gamut between kind of subscription services. There's been a lot of you know, meal delivery services, for example, that really want to get the word out there to users that are now at home and looking for ways to have those meals at home and have the products delivered to them. But their
Mm-hmm.
value proposition is around recurring usage over time. And so they've done deals with us where, for example, they give a free meal kit, and the user is exposed to that through TopHatter and might pay a little bit of money for that first box, but then the value to the brand is having that long-term relationship. So those kind
Mm-hmm.
of partnerships have worked really well for us,
It's
where
interesting.
it's a discovery thing on our end, and on their end it's more of a lifetime value thing.
That's really interesting because you don't think of it initially, but it makes a lot of sense. I'm spending time in there. So it is a user acquisition platform. It is a very good fit, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But another thing that makes this really work, you know, it's great to have the marketplace, the partnership, the experience, but consumer experience. I know we're going to go to questions because our audience is there and asking them, but to go to that experience, I know that you have some examples because, again, you're about fun at TopHatter. You know, you're about not just having a good shopping experience, but one that I want to come back to. So maybe you want to share some of the examples of how you bring gamification into retail to just create a different type of marketplace. Do you want to share that with me, Andrew?
Sure. Yeah, I can share my screen if you like.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's really worthwhile. And, you know,
can everyone
as
see this,
always, an
or?
example. Yeah, I'm seeing it. If you want to,
Okay, great.
we're good.
Yeah, so I think what
Yeah.
I would start with is, you know, one thing I'd mention is that we look really kind of weird from an e-commerce perspective. And if you want to check us out, you can download the app on iOS or Android or web and just kind of see what I mean. But I think that's intentional, because if you think about
Mm,
mobile, one of the early observations we had is that if you looked at all the top apps in the App Store, actually from the beginning of the App Stores or the Play Store on Google, all the way to till today, the charts are dominated by games. And that's not
mm-hmm.
just because people are killing time on their phones. It's like it's the phone is a form factor that enables these games, and people expect the experiences to be entertaining. And so we sort of had the belief early on, which is proven now to, I think, be true, is that commerce experiences that we're going to win on mobile, we're going to also look like games. And so we ended up
Mm-hmm.
playing with a lot of different formats. Most of the stuff that we sell today is through this live auction format. You can see some examples here on this screen
Yeah.
share. So it feels much more interactive and immersive. There is no searching. It's all stuff that's being pushed at you. The more you use it, so the smarter it gets about you. So you'll see
Mm-hmm.
more relevant products. But really, I think the key is that it's this game-like entertaining experience, as kind of quirky as that sounds. And you couldn't have imagined it before mobile, but now with mobile and the way people are using their devices, it's made a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
sense. So we have a lot of features. Some quick examples is we don't talk about buying products. We talk about winning products. So you win the auction, and then you
Cool.
get to have that product.
Okay.
We have lots of different progression in the game. We're
Uh-huh.
doing things that the game companies do. Like we have sounds and different like animations and things that you don't think about in e-commerce, but we think are really important to our success.
I can totally see that. Gen Z, millennial, you see it, I read it, I research it all the time. Gamification works. Everything from from how to work, everything has to be a bit of a good competition, leaderboards, winning things, some little digital perks and cartoony stuff. It looks like you're doing that kind of thing, having some fun. I'm personally having some fun here. I'm just going to check to check and see if we have some questions that want to come in. Think that I would imagine, because it's the first time I've looked at it this way. I'm usually doing other webinars and panels. To find the questions would be in the participants here, asking some we do have a couple. Just getting used to okay, great stuff. Just getting used to the to the dashboard here. Okay, because usually someone will read them to me, but I got to read them to you. That's not a problem. So what are your expectations? Oh, okay. What are your expectations from Benjamin heading into Q4? Spending heavily on UA or letting organic do most of the legwork? What do you think, Andrew? What's your thoughts on that? What do you expect?
What are we going to do? I mean,
Yeah,
both.
I
The
guess it's
answer is
both.
both.
Yeah.
We see a natural lift that always happens um, in Q4. Actually, for us, it's a little bit even earlier than that. We see like with kind of back to school time frame now, and then heading into the holidays, we see a lift in spend, and then everyone gets their new devices around the holidays and wants to download new apps and wants
Mm.
to try new things, and so it's a great time for us to do user acquisition then as well. So the answer is both, and this year is probably just going to be bigger and faster growth than any previous year because of all of the factors that we've already mentioned in terms of people becoming more familiar with these experiences
Yeah.
and adopting them quicker.
Okay. Another UA question. Are you finding UA success by working with managed service, one-to-one publisher relationships, or with networks?
We do, I mean, again, we might be more sophisticated than most, but we do most things direct ourselves in-house. Um, and we're always trying new channels. I think our most successful channel from the beginning has been Facebook. But for us, a lot of our objectives are to remain diversified because, as I mentioned earlier
Mm-hmm.
on, we want to be efficient. We want to be able to grow our spend. So we want to make sure that in any given period, Facebook is no more than half of our spend because we spend on Google as well, but Google for us has been much less effective channel. And again, this might speak to the discovery um, versus utility. Again, if you know what you want, you go to Google, you type it in. So paid search is a really effective channel for a lot of people in SEO.
Mm-hmm.
The only stuff that's worked for us on Google has been more display stuff, but on Facebook, it's a really similar experience to TopHatter where things are coming at you. You have a feed that gets smarter about you, and for an advertiser, we can target the kind of customers that are most likely to like our service, and so that's where we've had the most success. And a lot of our initiatives have instead been about diversifying. So we do a lot of content stuff. We've done influencer stuff. We've done a lot of direct relationships to find other channels.
Okay. Um, we do have some more questions, but we do need to also wrap up. Maybe the swag, since we're all virtual, Andrew, we can't have the swag. We don't get that bag at the end. So we'll give them a
All right.
tip. Yeah, we got to do something. So we give them a tip, take back to the office. Well, work at home. Nobody goes back to the office on Monday. A tip to our audience, our marketers, about, making the most out of UA or making the most out of the experience even for
Yeah.
retail apps at this point.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I don't know how actionable these tips are, but I think one thing that we've learned over the years has been to really embrace things that look, weird and different. So a lot of times
Okay.
there's a temptation to see what competitors are doing and look for, that tip of what you can replicate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that there's certainly some wins there in terms of just finding best practices, but I would encourage people to try really different weird experiences, because I would say what we've seen more than anything this year is that consumers are open to these new experiences in a way they haven't been
Hmm.
in the past, because of all the
Yeah.
changes happening in the world. And so we've seen a real ability to get scale from our experience that is interesting. So that's one thing I would say, is be open to different experiences. And the other thing I would
Okay.
say, which again is a little bit counter to the efficient growth, but be open to inefficiencies in your platform as well. And so try to have a longer term view. And again, for us, that means trying to look at how often a user comes back as a
Mm.
more important metric than can we get them out the door and converted as fast as possible. So those are the two things I would emphasize is you can find a lot of value and create a lot of long-term assets if you build things that are different and inefficient that other people would overlook and try to be more efficient about.
I love it. I love it. That blue ocean strategy coming through, be different, stand out, and be a little bit inefficient, because retention is something you're not going to see it all the time immediately. It's a journey. So you're going to have
Yep.
to be a bit more patient. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing so much, Andrew. I mean, people, they might want to get in touch with you. They might want to follow up, or just, check out if you're blogging or sharing elsewhere out there. What's the best way to stay in touch, Andrew?
Sure. Well, anyone can find me on LinkedIn, or even email
Okay.
me at my email is really easy to remember. It's just Andrew at TopHatter. Um, so yeah, please stay in touch or reach out if you have any questions.
Perfect. And there probably are some additional questions for you, so I'll leave everyone to get in touch with you directly. And until the next in the series, this is Peggy Ann Saltz, me, your host, signing off. More webinars, many hosted by myself as well, but lots of other great people over at mobilegrowthassociation.com/webinars. Also, the YouTube channel, Mobile Growth Summit. Like it, subscribe it, dive in, enjoy it. Knowledge is for sharing. This is my thoughts here. So my personal thoughts, it's for sharing. So spread the word about this webinar. Check out more over at mobilegrowthassociation.com, or DM me or email me at peggy@mobilegroove.com. Let me know what you think, what you want to see, some questions we might have missed, whatever we can do to make this an enjoyable, lasting, and worthwhile experience for you. And in the meantime, keep well, stay safe. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.